Hi there, Will here, and today I'd like to show you how I photographed the global campaign for Adidas. In this video, I'm going to give you a rundown of pretty much everything I can think of that went into making this campaign. In a linear way, hopefully. So what that means is I'll take you through prep, gear check stuff, the actual shoot day, of course, some lighting setups, and post-work. Speaking of post-work, this video is sponsored by me and my color course. The first thing that goes into making a campaign of this scale successful is prep work. There's a lot more prep work that happens in departments that aren't necessarily related to the act of photographing itself, but seeing as I am a photographer, I'm going to speak about the photographic side of things. So basically, in terms of the practical act of image making, things start off with location scouting. This, at this scale, is not something that the photographer is necessarily involved in. I personally was not involved in scouting the locations. There's a location scout that is in charge of doing the location scouting, and that's their whole job, and they get to go out and cruise and look for pretty things, or have a repertoire of places that they know are well suited to the brief for a campaign like this. And once the locations have been scouted and places have been decided upon, then one goes on a tech recce. A tech recce is a technical reconnaissance, I'm pretty sure. And what it entails is that the photographer and other people who need to know what the lay of the land is before they end up on set on the day, go to the places that have been scouted already and see what exactly is going on. In a photographic capacity, what this means is that I'll go and map out the light that's available and also meter for the ambient light to make sure that I have a mental picture of what it is that I need to take into account when I'm building a lighting list. So for the tech recce for this shoot, my assistant David and I went, and David did all the ambient metering and noted that down, and I mapped out all the locations that I wanted to use within the spaces and used Sunseeker to see what the sun was going to be doing at certain times. The reason a tech recce is important is because you get to determine where things like plug points are for charging stuff and build a schedule, because obviously if I'm shooting to take into account light, then I know which location is going to be best depending on what time of day we're there. So those are the two main things. This shoot was always going to be flash LED in terms of the way it was lit, but it's still super important, even if you are aware of the fact that everything is going to be lit by flash, to be aware of what the ambient light is going to be doing and be able to balance between the flash and the ambient light, because to me at least, a well-lit scene balances those two things equally. Not necessarily in the sense of exposure balance, just in the sense of an awareness of what the light is doing in the space and how exactly what you bring into it is going to interact with what's already there. With the tech recce complete though, the next stage of prep was basically building a lighting list to make sure that I had everything that I needed to accomplish my vision for the space and could move around it efficiently. If you were curious about what cameras specifically I used for this shoot, we shot digitally on a Canon R5 with the 15 to 35 and 24 to 70 lenses. On the film front, I had a Mamiya RZ67 with a full kit of lenses and a Pentax 67 with the 35mm fisheye.
That's my guy, Lee Shiffy.
before we carry on, a brief interlude to talk a bit more about my extremely well-reviewed color course. I'm going to add sections to the course detailing the grade for these images that you're going to see in this video, as well as the Capture One session. Also, I reckon, add rundowns of my process as it applies in different softwares like Affinity. If you do already own the course, then congratulations, this is all just going to be there for free. There's no upselling going on here. If anyone buys it, whatever gets added to it is part of the initial purchase. Anyway, before I list every piece of gear that went into this gear list, I'd like to talk you through the logic behind the lighting setup that I built. For me, as I've mentioned already, acknowledging what it is that the space itself provides is a super important element of any lighting scenario and is a large part of the way that my photography lighting is informed. So when we went on this tech recce and the first location had these gigantic windows with this incredible film over them that diffused the light naturally and turned the whole side of the building into a softbox basically, I decided that I'd just try run with that. And it wasn't just the marvelous natural diffused light that was coming into the picture, it was two stripes going down the wall as a result of a gap in the curtains above these diffused windows where the windows weren't diffused. And I decided that, because that was such a nice lighting scenario, I'd just like to try carry that over throughout the entirety of the shoot. So as we go through these pictures, you'll notice that there is a theme, and the theme is soft light for the most part, heavily diffused, and streaks of light, because I wanted to carry that sort of element throughout the shoot. The way that I like to build a list, if I'm in charge of creating the light in its entirety, is to use either a sketch or software like Set the Light to build what I want the setup to be, and then just refer to that and transfer it into a gear list. Set the Light is very cool software. You can basically use this sort of 3D modeling scenario to build rooms that are the size of the room that you're going to be in, and then use modifiers and lights to give you an idea of what it is that's going to result from certain flash setups. For me personally, I don't find it to be particularly accurate in terms of actually giving you a reflection of specific modifiers, but because I have the knowledge of what modifiers are going to do, I can use software like Set the Light to give myself a better picture of sort of where I want to be and then refine that into a gear list. I'll show you what was on the gear list. I mean, I'm not going to go through everything because it was a pretty comprehensive gear list, but basically it was balanced between having a hero setup and then also the option to just run and gun somewhat, because the way this campaign was laid out was that the first location was pretty much going to be where the entirety of it was going to get shot, and then there were two other locations where I would have the option to do pickup shots and maybe get some other location options for certain looks, but the hero setup was the first location, and then everywhere else I wouldn't necessarily have as much time to build a lighting setup. Once all of that has been set up in theory, the next step is of course to do a gear check. And what a gear check is, at least for me, because I know this varies depending on the assistants and photographers, is I go to the gear house and we'll go through every single piece of equipment and make sure it's functioning exactly as it should, from strobes to C-stands. Some people are a bit less anal about it, but I personally in my life have been through enough scenarios where one thing in a gear list wasn't working as it should, and it threw a massive spanner in the works, and if it's my shoot, then I'm going to be at that gear check making sure that absolutely everything functions perfectly. It can also be super useful, even if you don't necessarily need to be there as the lead stills photographer, to be there and talk through some of these things with the people that work at the gear house where you're getting the gear from, because gear house employees know more about the photographic equipment that you rent from them than pretty much anyone else would, and it can be fun to sort of have a back and forth and make sure that what you've convinced yourself in your head actually makes sense. And that's just the stuff that goes into prep on the photographic side. All the rest of it is equally as important, and it takes a mountain of people to make a photo shoot like this happen. Art department, unit, the people producing it, etc., etc. The three main people that I have to thank for how well this went on the day, though, are my assistants, David, TK, and Tegan. I literally could not have made the pictures I made here without my assistants, because I know them all very well and would consider all of them pretty good friends, David especially. David's my best man at my wedding, in fact. Being able to accomplish something like this takes a lot of shared vision, and the fact that I know them all well enough that we can operate on a set like this, and I don't need to be super in-depth about what it is that I want to accomplish when I'm describing it. They just know where things are going is incredibly useful, and I'm very lucky to have them. I think this campaign is probably my strongest commercial work so far. It's incredibly satisfying to see how the amount of prep work that goes into something like this actually can result in a really smooth shooting experience, and also results that I'm immensely proud of. I'll give you some image-specific breakdowns now that you've gone through the process with me, and take you through some of the lighting setups. Disclaimer though, a lot of the lighting setups here, in spite of the fact that I have exact documentation as to how they were built, were super malleable on the day because of the fact that I had David, TK, and Tegan there working with me, and none of them are really lighting setups that you can just set up in exactly the same way and then be good to go, because it all gets shifted and balanced towards what it is that's going on in the scene at the time. We'll start off with the hero setup, which is a setup that was designed to be able to be used within the large space and not necessarily be mobile, and as a result it could rely on mains power, which is what you need to run a ProPhoto Pro 11 pack, as well as the aperture spotlight. And the way it was designed was basically, as I've mentioned already, to take into account the ambient light that would be coming in. The exposure was somewhat balanced in relation to the ambient, so it wouldn't be completely blown out. This octobox was actually the key light above the model, and then there was a 12x12 butterfly scrim with a full stop of diffusion on it in front of a deep white umbrella with diffusion on as well. This octo also had a grid and 2 layers of diffusion inside of it, which is what allows the light to be so soft. This 12x12 is basically just providing a fill for this side and giving the shadows on the model a slight fill, because otherwise, just with the top-down light, it would have been quite, not necessarily harsh, but deep and shadowy on the garments, which isn't something that I wanted to lose. What the aperture is doing specifically is this beam of light over here, not the one above, just this one, is being cast by that aperture, because at this time of day it didn't match up with the time of day that there had been on the tech recce, where I saw these 2 bars of light. So this aperture is basically just filling in that light. We flew out the aperture when this light came in on its own, because we started shooting before the time that the light was going to be there at the tech recce. And that's about it. I mean, the way this octobox is set up is on a combo stand with a mega boom. A mega boom is basically just an arm that can extend, tilt, and rotate with controls along the boom and at the back of it, as opposed to you having to mess around with a C-stand. With a bunch of sandbags on the bottom, which I haven't drawn in there, and this thing at the back of the mega boom is a weight that offsets the weight of whatever it is you put there. And the last element of this whole lighting setup really was this black flag over here, which was just chilling there to add some contrast, because otherwise there would have been a bit more fill coming in from this side from the light that would have been reflecting out of the ambient element, and wouldn't have given this nice moody feel to the shadows. The next lighting setup is a bit of a simpler one, quite fun though. The goal here was to have super soft light, so only 2 lights, and again balanced with the ambient so that it wouldn't be too shadowy in the background. The key light is the umbrella, which is filling in the face over here and creates the highlights, the slight highlights on the face from this side. And then from the right hand side, I decided to booklight it, and a booklight setup is just basically a way that you can ensure really soft light, because you're using diffusion and indirect flash to fill it in. So essentially you set up a flash with a normal zoom head on it, in this case, pointing at the reflective side of a white polyboard, and then the reflection from that white polyboard bounces through a quarter stop diffusion here and fills in from the right hand side. That previous setup was also lit only with monolights, because as I mentioned, there were scenarios where it was more convenient to be super mobile, and that was one of them. This is another one of them. So this frame is lit from the left-hand side, again with a deep white umbrella, and then this streak that's coming in here is actually a magnum reflector, which is a boosted zoom reflector basically, with different textures and slightly more shine inside of it that'll amplify the light a lot more and give you a bit of a wider spread, with a CTO or color temperature orange filter on it to warm it up, shining through a window and then being blocked by a black flag about here to create this slight streak. And that's all there is to it. The ambient light isn't having an impact because the strobes are set to overpower the ambient light in this scenario to add more contrast and not have random fill light spilling in. And then the last setup is also a nice simple one, again with the magnum reflector with the CTO filter on it. And basically what this is the magnum coming from camera left, filling in the model, shining through a window. So the window itself is a fixed shape that's sort of shaping the light so that it only falls on the model as opposed to the model and the background. And then the stripe on the face is just thrown by the aperture. But really the only key light is this magnum, and then the aperture is just adding a little bit of a fun streaky element into that image. Anyway, a massive thank you to everyone that was involved in this shoot, with special thanks of course to my friends at Room Studio for the continued trust in me being able to make photographs like this come to life and accomplish what it is that they have as a vision and their brief. Endless thanks to the people who support this channel on Buy Me a Coffee, and I will see you in the very near future, continually operating around here, just slowly trying to make things as nice as they can be. Anyway, I'll see you soon.